Good day, everyone. Welcome to my summative presentation on educational psychology. My name is Kyle Bennett. I acquired a degree in geology from the University of Pretoria and currently work as a primary school maths and science teacher at a homeschool in Johannesburg. The knowledge and skills that I have gained in physics and chemistry during my undergraduate degree have been invaluable to my educational career. I decided to enter the world of education because I'm excited about learning and teaching and love being in the classroom. I want to impact as many children as possible and inspire them to become scientists or engineers. I get energy from playing a role in the growth and development of children. I love watching them grow into contributing members of society. Many of the assumptions that I had about teaching have changed since I've been in the classroom environment. I now understand that teachers carry many roles. They are leaders, motivators, assessors, facilitators of learning, and psychologists. My understanding of educational psychology is that it is the intersection between psychology and education. Educational psychology is essentially the scientific study of the behaviors and mental processes associated with human learning and instruction. Having completed this module, I now understand that there are many facets to educational psychology. Educational psychology deals with identifying the ways in which students learn and creating methods to teach them. The scope of educational psychology includes the psychology of the teacher and learner, understanding how humans develop, and strategies to create a stimulating and inclusive learning environment. These topics have all resonated with me deeply because I'm a practicing teacher and thus have the opportunity to apply these theories to my classroom. Without educational psychology, there would be no framework to think about how learning or teaching happens. The ideas that have emerged from educational psychology over the centuries have strongly affected how teaching and learning happens in the classroom in several ways. For one, educational psychology offers a scientific approach to understanding how learning happens. There are three primary theories of learning. These are behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. Behaviorism theorizes that learning happens through the repeated presentation of information and positive feedback. Cognitivism focuses on the role of the mind during learning, while constructivism contends that learners actively construct their own knowledge. All three learning theories can be incorporated into any lesson. Educational psychology also offers a scientific approach to improving learning. By understanding how humans develop physically, emotionally, and mentally, curriculum designers are able to craft appropriate syllabi for a given age group. Understanding barriers to learning also enables schools to implement structures that meet the needs of all learners. Educational psychologists also investigate the features of effective teaching. The goal of educational psychology and teacher education is to provide pre-service teachers with strategies to solve problems using psychological knowledge and methodologies. Teachers play a critical role in the education of a child. As such, teachers should learn to think like educational psychologists. By understanding each child in their care, creating a stimulating and inspiring learning environment, and implementing appropriate teaching strategies, teachers will be able to make an impactful difference in the learning and development of their learners. I have learned that educational psychology is a tool that can enhance my teaching practice. I now have a better grasp of how people learn, as well as different teaching strategies that can be incorporated into my lesson planning. I've learned how to evaluate different factors that can influence learning. For example, classroom layout, learner attention and motivation, prior learning, cognitive readiness, and maladjustment. I have also learned how people at different stages of their lives think, perceive, remember, and acquire new information. I learned the value in teaching for understanding, as opposed to rote learning, as well as methods to create an inclusive and holistic learning environment. I knew too little about educational psychology to have any misconceptions about the units in this module. However, before starting this module, I had no idea that educational psychology was actually a science. How wrong I was. I now understand that educational psychologists are really scientists who ask questions about human behavior in educational settings and try to answer these questions with experiments, observations, and critical reasoning. I will now reflect on each of the 6 units in this module. In Unit 1, we learnt about the historical development of educational psychology. We also briefly learnt about the different schools of thought, such as behaviorism, constructivism, and cognitivism. This timeline highlights only a tiny sample of the many influential thinkers and their schools of thought who have contributed to educational psychology over time. Although this field has ancient roots, it remains vibrant today. Current research in educational psychology involves using brain imaging techniques to see which brain circuits become activated during the learning activities. Thanks to this unit, I now have a firmer grasp of how historic thinkers shaped educational psychology, and by extension, teaching and learning in classrooms around the world. Going forward, I'll be integrating the spectrum of learning theories into my teaching practice. In Unit 2, we engage with various developmental theories in order to better understand the emotional, social, and physical development processes that affect learning. In a nutshell, development is the process by which a child's behavior changes over time. Development is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Developmental psychology describes the sequence of biological, cognitive, and emotional changes that humans undergo as they grow older. A theory is an explanation of something. Human development is a complex process with many variables at play. Trying to understand how humans develop is a lot like blind men trying to explain what an elephant is. The man holding the elephant's tail might think it's a mouse. Another, who's gripping its trunk, might suggest it's a snake. Likewise, no single developmental theory can fully explain how humans develop. By understanding how and why humans change and grow, I can better help my learners to live up to their full potential. This unit introduced me to the concepts of holistic education. In contrast to traditional education, holistic education avoids excluding any significant aspects of the human experience. It attempts to foster a less materialistic and more spiritual worldview, including more dynamic and holistic views of reality. It seeks to create a society where we live in harmony with our environment. Holistic education promotes the balanced development of different developmental domains of an individual, that is cognitive, physical, and emotional. As such, it is essential to understand the individual in context. Holistic development has forced me to reflect on what it truly means to be educated. In Unit 3, we investigated different theories of learning, with special focus on the theories of Jean Piaget and Lev Vygotsky. Jean Piaget suggested that children develop through a series of 4 distinct, universal stages of cognitive development, from an infant to a young adult. Each stage includes certain milestones where a child begins to demonstrate more sophisticated ways of thinking about their environment. Jean Piaget believed that children act on their environment to learn. Furthermore, when learning happens, humans change their way of thinking to accommodate the new knowledge. Meanwhile, Vygotsky proposed the socio-cultural theory of development. This theory emphasized the importance of culture and language of one's cognitive development. Vygotsky described learning as a social process. It is through the social interactions that learners learn from each other and adults. He believed that children are capable of reaching a higher cognitive level through instruction from a more knowledgeable individual. Both Piaget and Vygotsky agreed that children actively construct knowledge. By incorporating both Piaget's and Vygotsky's theories into my teaching practice, student learning is likely to increase. In Unit 4, we were introduced to the Teaching for Understanding framework. What does it mean to understand something? How can teachers assist learners to develop understanding? Teaching for understanding is a teaching strategy that requires learners to think critically, analyze, solve problems, and make meaning of what they've learned. This approach to teaching encourages teachers to create activities that develop understanding in learners. The framework draws on learning theories like Vygotsky's social constructivism. When teaching mathematics, for example, don't teach your learners tricks to find the answer to a procedural problem. Rather, teach them to master the knowledge so that they can apply what they've learned in unfamiliar contexts. The guidelines of the Teaching for Understanding framework, such as creating an atmosphere of inquiry, can help teachers to deepen their learners' understanding. These guidelines can be integrated into my lesson planning and instruction in the future. In Unit 5, we learned how to identify barriers to learning and how to implement teaching strategies to mitigate these barriers in order to create a more inclusive learning environment. We were tasked with presenting one developmental barrier to learning. I chose to present on autism spectrum disorder because one of my own learners, Jimmy, is on the spectrum. I learned about how to identify learners with autism, how autism impacts learning, as well as strategies that I can use to assist such learners. I immediately started implementing these strategies, such as removing distractions from the classroom environment, so that I can better accommodate Jimmy. In the final unit of the module, we learned about the psychology of the teacher, with special focus on maladjustment and good mental health. Teaching can be very stressful, and if basic needs aren't met, a teacher may become maladjusted. Maladjusted teachers can be anxious, irritable, tired, and disorganized. This can impact learning negatively. In groups, we learned how to look out for symptoms of maladjustment in teachers and how to combat stress by striving for good mental health. I tend to have idealistic views of the teaching profession. This unit helped me to prepare for the challenges of being a teacher. I will use the techniques that I've learned in this unit to live a balanced lifestyle. The units on developmental and learning theories completely changed my outlook on teaching. These sections introduced me to new ways of understanding how learners acquire, process, and store information. In other words, how learners actually learn. These theories have already helped me in the classroom by improving how I teach, and by extension, how my learners learn. By understanding how learning takes place, I am now able to plan more effective lessons and create a more stimulating learning environment. I have adopted Piaget's theory of cognitive development in my teaching practice by developing a better understanding of how my learners think. I have successfully aligned my teaching strategies with my learners' cognitive levels. For example, the learners in my grade 4 maths class are all roughly 10 years old. This places them in Piaget's concrete operational stage. I understand that they may struggle with abstract thinking, which is why I strive to introduce new maths concepts using concrete manipulatives. I create learning experiences where my learners are able to actively construct new knowledge. I have also incorporated Vygotsky's zone of proximal development into my lessons, along with scaffolding. I provide my learners with assistance in tasks that they wouldn't otherwise be able to complete alone. It's pointless teaching my learners what they already know and what they cannot do even with assistance. Applying this approach to teaching is especially helpful during science practical sessions. During science practicals, I place my learners into small groups. Each group cooperates to figure out how to answer a scientific question through experimentation. If my learners fail to come to a solution, I will give them hints in order to guide their thinking. For example, I might hand them a few materials that they might need in order to answer the scientific question. Lev Vygotsky's approach to teaching and learning is especially applicable for my older learners. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I hope that you find it insightful.